So first we're going to talk about the Escazú Agreement. The Escazú Agreement is a historic agreement in Latin America and the Caribbean that enshrines the rights of environmental defenders to protection and ensures accountability for environmental projects. For more on it, I'm joined by Uriel Medina. Uriel is an activist with Escazú Ahora Mexico. So, Uriel, Mexico just ratified the Escazú Agreement just this November, right? Um, what does that mean for Mexico? What does Mexico pledge to do?
Okay, let me like get uh, the the overview in my head. Basically, uh, Mexico with this ratification, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit in a few minutes, but Mexico with not it's not official a official ratification because it hasn't the ratification instrument hasn't been deposited in the UN, but in in a general or basic overview, the ratification is there. So this means that Mexico uh, compromises to be part of this agreement and to uh, kind of um, yeah, it like signed its pledge to do what is what is written in the Escazú agreement, no? And also to incorporate this agreement into the agenda, into the legislation in the country. So it is a big step for the country in these terms about climate justice.
You said it wasn't fully ratified. Can you just explain kind of what the last step is to ratifying it? And
Yeah,
I guess is it, are you planning that it's going to happen? Are you expecting the Mexican government to do that?
yeah. So let me explain. In 2 years ago, the Escazú agreement was created, was signed, and was open for countries to sign it and ratifying it. And when it was created, the same people that created it, they established 2 years for countries to sign it, and it was established that for it to enter into like vigor in Spanish, let me search for it. Uh, to for it to come into force, it has to take 11 ratifications. It means 11 countries has to sign it and then ratifying it. A country, let me explain like this. A country sign it when it's like interested in taking part into this agreement, and it ratifies it when it's like really compromised into the agreement. And like the official thing, it's the ratification. So it was like a period of 2 years for countries to sign it, and if it passed that 2 years and a country didn't sign it, like it's the case of Chile, uh, then there's a kind of rare thing there, but a country cannot be like fully part of the agreement. It can be part of it like in some other legal process, but basically Mexico was like the first 10 countries to sign it, and it was like very it had a good position in 2 years ago, but it here in Mexico internally it was presidential elections and change of everything and a lot of a lot of restructuring. So it passed like those 2 years and nothing was happening and nothing was like taking the process was like frozen. So we had this whole campaign, and now like in November it was like ratified, but only ratified because in the Senate here in Mexico the project like the ratification project was approved.
Mm.
So it's like the first step. The ratification project was approved, and here internally like it was like the Escazú agreement is good for our country and we're going to compromise our legislation for it, no? So then and this happened like a few weeks ago. The Mexico published the Escazú agreement in the feder the let me search for it, Diario Oficial de la Federación, the official journal of the Federation, DOF in Spanish. And it's like a journal where all the agreements and all the things that are happening in the country are like published. So it was published there, and now the last step is like the thing that makes the ratification like something official, and it's like published in the UN and everything. It's that the ratification instrument is deposited by Mexico, by the Mexican delegation, directly into the CEPAL, into the Economic uh, Commission of of the United Nations. And so it's like three steps, and there's one missing. So officially, there are only 10 ratifications, and we need one. So we're like just expecting for Mexico to deposit the ratification into the UN for it to like. So let me explain something else. When the 11th ratification is deposited, and officially it's like the 11th one into the account, there is like a period of 90 days for it to come into force. So it's basically just a matter of time because it's like internally approved and everything. It's just a matter of time that Mexico deposit into the UN. So we're just expecting that is the sooner as possible. But that's like the whole overview.
Well, I guess why is it just like a simple bureaucratic error, or why has Mexico not yet deposited the ratification?
I'm not. It's cool that you asked it because I'm not that sure why. Like there's I don't know if because the pandemic or it's because some legal issues there. I don't think that it's we have to wait a lot longer for legal issues because the legal issues just that have passed it. They passed. So uh, I think it's just like a logistics thing, but like it's a dumb thing if you think about it because well it will be the 11th one and like the 90 days will come after it is deposited. So I think it's just a matter of time, but I really don't know. Uh, but yeah,
You mentioned that Mexico signed the agreement, what, 2 years ago?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and it only, with pressure from you and your group, only ratified it this past November and still has to deposit it to the UN. But I guess what, why did it take? I guess what was the problem? What was the thing stopping Mexico from actually ratifying it? Because from an outsider's point of view, it's like, okay, we've signed it, let's ratify it now. So you'd think that it would be a, smooth transition from signing to ratifying.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's like basically after signing it, we had like presidential elections and everything was like restructuring. So the people that was like in the need of uh, let me explain. The Escazú agreement actually here in Mexico, we had a like um uh, basically the Escazú agreement here and everything and like in every country it first has to pass into the like in some kind of process about analyzing what things has to change here in the laws and everything for it to be adopted by our country. Let's put it like this. It was signed by like in the first, I think it was the same day that it was open for nations to sign it. Mexico was really interested about it, and everything passed like these presidential elections. Everything was like this restructuring in our country, and it was like kind of forgotten. But
Hmm.
everything it's very weird because the Senate, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Yeah, the Senate was really keen into ratifying it. It was just like a matter of time, but I don't know why it takes so long, why it took so long, because the I just forgot the name, but it's like let me search for it. But basically, there is like this organism in our country that has to analyze the like the economic part, the legislative part here in Mexico for the agreement to be adopted. So this analyzing this voting and everything was taking so long. But basically, it was because of the pandemic and because of the presidential elections that it took so long.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, assuming Mexico does, deposit it with the UN, we'll have 11 countries ratifying it, right?
Yeah,
And so, given that, that means the Escazú agreement, comes into force in the countries only that sign, or sorry, in only the countries that ratified it, correct?
yeah, true.
So, um, what about those countries that didn't, ratify it? Like you mentioned, Chile. What happens to those countries?
Ah, uh, those countries like have the opportunity, still have the opportunity to take part in the Escazú agreement, but they have to. It's not a official ratification. It's called an adhesion. I don't know if I'm saying right. A ADHESION, and basically it's like a parallel process to take part in the Escazú agreement, but it's not like the correct way. I don't know how to say this, but the Escazú agreement was made for the countries to ratify it, and basically it's not it's not well seen for a country to just like Chile that it was very interested about taking part, but finally the president say a lot of excuses for Chile not into uh, taking part, participating in the Escazú agreement, but basically a country that uh, not signed it after this 2 years period uh, can also take part in the Escazú agreement, but in another process. I think it happened. I don't. Let me search for it, but I think uh, a country like made this process after the period for countries to ratify it and everything. Like a few weeks ago, a country actually uh, the word adhesión, uh, basically a country joined to the agreement after this, but I don't know the name. So if Mexico deposits into the UN and this country does too, uh, it counts like 12 ratifications. Let me search for it. I think it's Santa Lucia. I don't remember.
That sounds right to my knowledge.
But yeah.
And what kind of pressure did you have to put on the government? Was there much opposition to, your campaign to finally ratify the Escazú agreement?
Basically, like this pressure we put into the government was like for actually taking action,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like I told you, like it was kind of forgotten, and like everything was so slow, and they told us like we haven't voted this agreement because of the pandemic, and because we have to like presidentially vote this. We have to like the
Mm-hmm.
Senate has to be in like this building to vote for it, and the pandemic like slowed it a little bit. But it was basically that like Mexico was keen into taking part, but it was just too slow, the process. So basically this pressure was for it to speed up like these votings and everything.
Do, do you think that, the Senate didn't actually ratify it? Was that out of like a I think what I'm hearing you say is that, at least for some countries like Chile, there's, a somewhat of a political will, but it's kind of like a yes, we support human rights, but then they don't follow
Yeah.
through on it.
Yeah, and
The-
and they told in Chile it was like, oh, we already have everything that is saying the Escazú agreement like in our country, but then you turn around and there is a lot of climate injustice, and
Mhm.
everything that's going on, and they tell and they only tell like we have more than the Escazú agreement says, and the Escazú agreement compromise Chile to a whole point that it's worse for our country, and everything. Like it's a little bit weird, but in Mexico actually I don't know if it's we were lucky, but everything in like in the government and everything, like it was like some positive position. every there was not like this opposition like in Chile. Like in Chile, the the m- the first minister like uh, putting a lot of excuses, and Piñera, the president, telling a lot of things that didn't that it wasn't the reality. So
Mhm.
there are like uh, two different uh,
Two
I
different kind
lost
of
the word.
levels.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so, given what's happened in Chile, that kind of this, I don't want to call it performative, but kind of this pledge to support human rights, yet not following all the way through on ratifying the Escazú agreement. Given that, do you kind of observe a similar pattern in Mexico, where you are? With the Senate taking so long to finally ratify the Escazú agreement, was the pandemic, in your view, just kind of like a convenient excuse for them? Like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't vote today. Sorry about that. Check back later. Or was that, in your view, kind of just like a genuine thing? Because, as you mentioned, the presidential turmoil plus the pandemic. Was that
Yeah.
the whole thing more of like a genuine not being able to fully follow through on ratifying? Or was it the whole pandemic thing, the whole transition thing? Was that more of a
Hmm.
convenient excuse?
I think at first it was like a real thing. It's the this presidential change and the pandemic, like it really affected things going on in every country.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like seeing 1 year, 2 years passing, the months passing, and nothing was doing. uh, there was this analyzing like that I told that I really didn't explain that that this like economic thing when I just don't have this thing in my head. I just forgot the name, but the Senate was the one that really did the things a little bit faster before the Senate for it to vote. Um, like this analyzing, we have this Escazú agreement and we have to adopt it into our country, into Mexico. So it was this like, um, let me search for it. Like I don't want to. Uh, But let me explain. Like there is like this Escazú agreement. We have to adapt it into our country. So we have to analyze what things have to be changed in our country for it to like can be adopted here, like in the economic way, in the social way. Not that in the social way, but like what things in our legislation have to be corrected and everything. That was what really took so long. And and really, the Senate like really was keen into voting it, at the point that the Senate told that this, I don't remember what, to hurry up. And it was a huge thing. But basically when it was passed, like this Escazú
Mm.
agreement, the the thing to the Senate, everything like really really, it was much more more fast. But I think into a point it was more like a convenient thing, because like days passed, and they were like, oh, we're going to vote, but we don't know when. So and we saw it like into days before it was really voted. So yeah.
So kind of a mix of both. So at first, kind of a real
Yeah.
problem. Yeah. Um, Given that this, treaty is a binding treaty, which, as far as I know, is the first of its kind.
Yeah.
Um, I guess how important is that?
Yeah, I love talking about this because I think it's very, very important. If you like look into how the UN works and how everything works, it's just like a series of recommendations to countries, and a series of, oh, we have to do this for for our planet not to be destroyed. But do whatever you want. Like, you as a country, do whatever you want to do. Like, not a fully compromising thing. Like just a I'm going to apport, like to add to fighting to this problem, but with this and this little thing. So this
Mm.
Escazú agreement like really really, um I don't know how to say this, but the countries really have a pledge into the agreement, like really have to make something, and this binding thing like really really helps for the countries to do something and not just leave it like an like another agreement. And to sell that, this Escazú agreement really really helps Mexico, because Mexico, um, is one of like, it's the top one country in Latin America with more agreements signed and more agreements ratified. But if you look into our country, there's like a lack of really doing what the agreement says, and everything that it's signed in our country says. So a agreement like this, a binding agreement, uh, really helps into pushing these things to action, and not just like a a written thing in paper. So
What are the enforcement mechanisms? So, I mean, for the sake of argument, something like the Paris Climate Agreement, right? Countries say we're gonna do our level best to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Certainly not more than 2 degrees. But in fact, there's no enforcement mechanism for that. So they can pledge all they want, but they aren't actually doing anything. So, given that, how does the Escazú agreement change things? How is it actually going to enforce the things these countries agreed to?
There's like a lot of this big debate in some countries like Chile about how this Escazú agreement uh, in, involves in the legislation of a country, like taking care of the sovereignty,
Mm-hmm.
uh, sovereignty, yeah,
Sovereignty, yeah.
yeah. So because it was like the main excuse of Chile for it
Hmm.
not to sign, for it not to ratify it. Like this agreement is going to affect our sovereignty, so and really it's going to affect our country in a whole way that we're going to compromise ourselves more than we can, and everything like really really dumb. So there's the Escazú agreement, there's not like really a thing that um let me look for it, like force, there's not really a thing that force a country for do something like in specific, but after the Escazú agreement come into force and everything, there will be like this conferences of the parts, like annually the countries that are in this like list of ratifying countries are going to um, take part in one conference, and they're going to see like what are the um, what things have been done in each country, and there'll be like direct recommendations, like a country is really affected by something, and they're going to have like these mechanisms for it to like take into action. And another thing that I really like about the Escazú agreement is that it really uh, takes like this climate justice thing, but it combines it with a lot of public participation. So
Mm.
the citizenship like really can take part into these mechanisms and these processes. So I really like that because it's not only like a government thing, like it's a mixture of interdisciplinary things, and like I think that's a really big thing for it to take things into action. So I don't know if I explain myself, but like this thing that says countries what to do is not that direct, or it not force a country to doing something, but it really encourages like in a whole different thing, like encouraging the people, encouraging the same countries in Latin America, and
Hmm.
I don't know, but it's really cool.
So let's say worst case scenario, a government fails to own up to its um, the agreements that it made under the Escazú agreement. So let's, for the sake of argument, many more defenders, environmental defenders, are killed. Um, what happens? What um, what paths to justice, I guess, does the Escazú agreement have, if any, I suppose?
Oh, that's a really good question because like I don't know the real answer for that question, but I really can imagine like that scenario because first like all the eyes will be put into that country, like in this conference of the parts, and uh, I don't really have the answer because like this is beginning to be like structured, and it haven't been coming to force, so it's like really the mechanisms. are being are are like are being built right now. So I don't really know what like uh, punishments, if we can name it like that, are into one country for it to happen. But first, this Escazú agreement really encourages like young activists and environmental defenders for like raise their voices. So I think that's like a really important thing, because it's not only a government thing. This Escazú agreement, it's like a a instrument, a tool that the same citizenship and the same environmental defenders can use for their safety, for their like their environment. So
I don't mean to be cynical here, but I just wonder to what extent you think you mentioned public participation as a really important point. I just wonder if arguably that really matters to that extent because, again, I'm going to go with the Paris Climate Agreement, right? These countries agree we're going to limit global warming, yada, yada, yada. So theoretically, people can keep them accountable to that promise, right? Which is a little like the Escazú Agreement. But in practice, governments are still, flying way beyond their climate targets. So if push comes to shove, do you think the Escazú Agreement can actually make a difference?
okay, and that's a really good question, because I think this Escazú agreement has made everything like differently, has changed like the paradigm, para
Paradigms?
paradigms. Yeah. So from the beginning, the same citizenship was saw the need for a tool like this instrument to be created, and the same citizenship like kind of created this Escazú agreement. So this Escazú agreement is doing things differently, and if you put into a comparison with the Paris Agreement, that it's like really stressful for the public participation. Like this Escazú agreement from the beginning is taking people, it's encouraging people to participate. It's encouraging like the governments to create these mechanisms, but within the youth participation and within the public participation. So like the same as Escazú agreement, it's not only a climate justice thing, but it's like a climate justice combined with uh, access to information and combined to public participation. Like I love this agreement because of that, because it really like combines what it's need for a real public participation. Like not only like yeah, you're doing good, like the youth participation, not only like encouraging them to strike, but like really giving them information about what's going on in the country, about what what's like the government doing. So if you ask it like that, I really think that it's a different like a different scenario, because like the same as Escazú agreement, it's made up uh, because of the public participation and the same citizens. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that public participation aspect. Kind of what public participation aspects are there in this law that makes you, or this agreement, sorry, that makes you so confident and so, I guess, proud of it?
Um, well, first, like the same name, the it's called the Escazú agreement, but it's like regional agreement for the access to information, climate justice, and public participation in Latin America, no? So and the Caribbean. So the same name has and the same articles. There's like one or two articles that talk about this public participation and how the countries, after ratifying it and after coming to force, like, are going to build these mechanisms for hearing the youth voices and the the people that are really in the need of some help. Um, like this whole mechanism uh, that is going to be built after like coming into force, and we're in Escazú Ahora, Mexico. That's where we really run. That's where what we really want to build these mechanisms together with the government, like not just letting them build everything and then for just inviting us like to to saying hello. Like this really has to be something that we build together, like into a thing that really that we can really see what the progress is made. And I don't know, it's really like a cool thing because specifically for the Escazú agreement, like the Latin American youth, we like knew how to adapt it for I don't know how to put this into a sentence, but for me and a lot of people and in young people, like it's the first agreement that it's made and it's negotiated like after we are born, like the Paris Agreement and everything. It's just like there before we are born, and we like grew, and I just learned about it like a few months ago and everything. And I think this Escazú Agreement is like a good opportunity for youth people, the young people and the climate like environmental defenders, and like to really have a part, like participating to building it from zero, from scratch. So I don't know, like I'm like really confident. I'm really proud of it, not because um like it's existing or something. Like I really am proud of it because like it's just built in a way that really can help and like really change things that are made like in the way it is. So I don't know if I explain myself, but yeah.
Uh, and you earlier mentioned that in Chile, part of the concern was a loss of sovereignty. You kind of explained that that isn't quite how it works, but um, given that that concern was in Chile, were you kind of running up against the same concern with your activism in Mexico?
I think not, because it wasn't really an excuse here in Mexico. Like the president, it's not the best president we've had, and I really like the president. I really don't know if the president knows the Escazú agreement exists, but in that point, because I really never saw him like talking about it, and I don't know. It's a really weird thing. So in Chile, it's a very different thing because it's like a real opposition. The
Mm,
government and the first minister, um, it's like a really different scenario. Like everything in Mexico, like came really good into a point. Like only things were stopped because of the pandemic and some excuses that were slowing the process. But in Chile, was really different because there was like a real opposition in the government about saying this sovereignty, and like we had what the Escazú agreement says, and we don't need it, and everything like really bad.
mm,
But like it's like the same scenario and very different in very different countries in Latin America where there's this real opposition, and it's really sad because like why wouldn't you want the Escazú agreement be part of your country? Like it's really weird. So like these different countries like Costa Rica that their process is it continues to this day, and there's one of the first things that we want to see in this 2021, the ratification of Costa Rica, because they had like a problem in the process where something went wrong, and the process were like starting from zero, and everything like this weird. And in Argentina, they ratified before Mexico, and it was like kind of the same in Mexico. There was not this really big opposition, so it really helped the process. And but I knew one country. I don't know if it's Guatemala. I don't really know, and I don't want to be wrong, but there was this country where I think it's Paro. I don't know, but where the ratification process was so good and was like uh, was like it was happening, and there was like a point where the Senate had to vote, and they voted out. So it was like archivado. Let me search for it. Archive. What is? It was archived. Am I saying it good? So it's like it's like a I'm so bad at English. It's like a runner's race. Like
Mm.
every Latin American country had its process, and one country had its problems, and one country like Chile.
Mm.
uh, and it's really cool because the same youth in Latin America like really encouraged each other. Like we had these Escazú Ahora campaigns like in Chile, like in Costa Rica, the the Escazú. We like really built a really good network in here in Latin America to really raise up the voices. So I don't know, but it was like a really big opportunity for activists and to really speak up and like really adopt the Escazú agreement for the youth. And I don't know, it's really cool.
And you mentioned there about Costa Rica. Um, so for those countries like Costa Rica, what is the process for them to ratify Escazú? Because I think the formal deadline has passed, right? What's the process for Costa Rica, assuming they do decide?
Yeah, it's like I forgot the word, but it's a process like the ratification process, and they like doing the same thing, but basically they're not uh, the basic difference is that they're like slowing things up to a point where like this conference of the parts uh, is going to take part, uh, and if Costa Rica doesn't like rat- ratifies the agreement, but it's not a real ratification, it can be to a point where Costa Rica doesn't take part into this cup. So it's just like a matter of time. But let me write here. It's this process, a adhesion process, I think.
The adhesion process, yeah.
Addition, yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So a country after this like period of time, like they had a 2-year period for countries to sign it and to ratifying it. And I think it's going to happen with Chile and Costa Rica and every country that didn't ratify it. They can like take participate in the agreement and join the agreement. Uh, but now that you ask, I'm going to really search for it, like the real difference after this period, because I think it's not the same that a country like joins the agreement after the period, but it can really join the agreement. Like it's not like the period passed and the agreement is closed. No.
Hmm.
Like Costa Rica still has an opportunity and Chile still has an opportunity.
Okay. Um, just brief question. Can you explain what Escazú Ahora is? Is that kind of a movement? Is it an organization? Is it just a loose network of, youth trying to get
Yeah.
Escazú ratified?
Yeah, it's a little like this Escazú Ahora, there's like one in in each different country. Like in Chile, it's Escazú Ahora Chile, and in other countries, it's like Red Escazú, but it's basically the same thing. But here in Mexico, we started like a campaign, like a campaign for the ratification of the Escazú Agreement. But after the ratification, well, if if Mexico deposits the ratification instrument into the UN, um, I think this is actually an organization. And now that you ask, it like really turned like after the campaign, the network is like really cool to a point that like we the same team in Escazú Ahora Mexico really work really well. Like we work really well. So it's basically an organization that connects activists here in Latin America and basically in Mexico. So yeah, it's basically an organization
Okay.
that
I just
works
have
like
two
a
more questions. I
campaign.
don't want to keep you forever. Uh,
No, no.
so
Sorry
you mentioned to me
for
before
taking
we
me back.
started recording that you only got involved with Escazú very recently. Do you want to kind of talk about that? How you got involved, and you mentioned before you were kind of focusing on individual action, beach cleanups. I think you mentioned. Um, what was that, shift like? What got you into the ratification of the Escazú Agreement? Because, like, as I mentioned to you before, it seems like a huge logical jump for me,
Yeah.
from the beach cleanups to Escazú Agreement.
Uh, it's I don't really remember, but I already like had this like in my school I had this I have this club like for individual actions and I don't know, but like in social media really helped me
Mm,
for like uh knowing what things were happening around the world.
mm,
So I saw Escazú Ahora Chile, and I really like questioned myself like what was Escazú Ahora Chile. So I looked for it, and it was like what? Like there's this Escazú agreement happening like 2 years ago, and no one really told me. So I like contacted this Escazú Ahora Chile project manager, the Karin, and I told her like um if she knew like what was there Escazú Ahora Mexico already in here in my country, because I really didn't know about anything like activism. I was not into anything. I really didn't know one activist, like a person like uh, face to face. I didn't know like anyone. So my everything I knew it was because of social media. So I really don't know face to face anyone that I've worked together in this Escazú Ahora campaign. but it really helped me because like I reached out to this girl in Chile and I told her like, uh, is there already a whole campaign in Mexico that I have never heard before? And she told me like, I don't think so, but you can create one. And I was like, ah, yeah. So I contacted this incredible activists here in my country, and we create Escazú Ahora campaign. So it was like really this big jump uh, between like recycling and like taking care of my like house to mobilizing. And one thing that like the first jump I had into activism was like in April, I think. My whole activism started in the pandemic, when the pandemic started, uh, and I love what you're doing with Fridays for Future Digital, because I think this pandemic like really encouraged a lot of people in their houses, in their rooms. Like, I don't know what to do to mobilize in presentially, like in the streets, but I can really do something, and I can really like educate myself. So in April, in the Earth Day, in April 24th, there was like this big movement, and that was like the first time I really had like this activism thing. But I think it was there when I really like saw this whole new world of activism, and I knew about the Escazú agreement like in July. So I think it's really funny because then I saw like these really big activists like a year ago, 2 years ago, really mobilizing. So it's really funny, but I yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of Fridays for Future Digital, I think some months ago at this point, Fridays for Future Digital, along with Re-Earth and maybe Zero Hour, did a push
Yeah,
for
Uriel.
Escazú. Uh, did that? I don't mean to, crap on my own organization, but did that actually do anything? Like, did that whole mobilization that we tried to do, did we actually affect anything? Or was it, mostly just like a blip on our radar, and then you along with other Escazú Ahora activists were kind of putting up the brunt of the work?
No, I think like that's what I really love. And we in the process of and structuring all the campaign, and seeing that other people in other countries are really encouraging us like to continue and really raising their voices. It was really encouraging, like seeing the Escazú Ahora Chile, seeing like these big international organizations like to to joining to this movement and to joining to raise our voices. It was really encouraging and really like it it was like a really big punch in every Escazú Ahora movements in their countries, to seeing this kind of like movements. And I don't know, it was like a really, really, really like encouraging thing.
And just lastly, watch this not be the last question. No, I just wonder, to what extent is Escazú a silver bullet? Like, what else needs to be done, or does anything else need to be done? To what extent can just we in the general sense like just sit back and say, all right, we're done, we've probably ratified Escazú, we know 11 out of the 22 countries that signed it have ratified it, can we sit back now and relax?
Wow. Like that's the big issue. Like things like it just started. Like all these processes and everything, it was just for this moment to happen. Like it was like a really funny thing mobilizing the Escazú Ahora campaign because it was a a whole activism for just the ratification, and really we really like talked about it. Like this is like the first step. We cannot just sit back and we say like, ah, we did it. And like things there's a lot of things that has to be done. Like this Casuera agreement, like it's the tool. Now we have to give it to people that are reliving like a really difficult experiences and that are like really affected by these climate issues. So I think like the tool, this instrument that is the Escazú agreement, like is just the 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 first step for really reaching these communities and really like raising voices. So it's really funny because all this mobilizing, all these things that has been done, it's to the point that like we just started, and it's like a mixture of encouraging and like and saying wow, like we just mobilized this whole like Chile mobilized a lot, like thousands and thousands and thousands of people mobilizing their country for Escazú Ahora and Escazú Ahora and Escazú Ahora, and they're continue fighting for the ratification, but well, the addition um and I think like in Mexico that we're about to ratify it, um we're going to like move one step up, and I don't know, it's like the first thing, the first step, the ratification. It's not like the end of the process, it's just the beginning. And it was really encouraging. Like we're really taking part from the beginning and from scratch. I don't know, it's
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, what else needs to happen, given that
yeah.
we can't sit back yet? Darn. Um, what else needs to happen?
Yeah, like one thing that we really want to do, and it was really really difficult for us, like mobilizing things, was really reaching these communities. I think like it's really difficult and now in the digital way to like when we were like collecting signatures for the Senate, uh, we wanted to translate this this uh, letter, this letter. We wanted to translate this letter to different native
Native languages?
yeah, native languages, and it was really difficult for us. Like we had this letter translated like into six different native languages here in Mexico, but it was really difficult for us to reach out to these communities. So I think the first thing we have to do is like really building these mechanisms for activisms, for activists to and the government to reach these communities and really like raise their voices, not only like to have this instrument going, the Escazú agreement going in our country, but to really reach out to them, and really like ask for them, ask them like what do they need us to do. Like, I don't know, but like I think the first step that has to be done is to reach them, to reach these communities, and then we can like work together and like really stand up for climate justice. No?
Okay, that's actually all the questions I had now. Thank you very much, Uriel. That was Uriel
No, thank
Medina.
you.
That was
I'm
Uriel Med-
sorry if
No,
I
don't
didn't
worry.
have the ideas in my head.
No, 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 you're fine. It was really, really good. That was Uriel Medina from Escazú Ahora Mexico.